Sterile processing techs are the people responsible for making medical equipment clean and safe. In this video, we're going to help you answer the question, should you become a sterile processing tech in 2021? We're going to go over the latest salaries, job market statistics, and the latest trends. Coming up. Hey everyone, Stephen Hack here with Career Watch, where we help you with your career search. If you haven't been enjoying the video, hit that thumbs up to support the channel. And if you're a sterile processing tech, let us know down in the comments below. What do you enjoy about this occupation and what do you dislike about it? Sterile processing techs have several roles and responsibilities. They clean instruments to prepare them for sterilization, and then they test them afterwards. They examine equipment to detect leaks, worn or loose parts, or other indications of disrepair. If they find any defects, they report the defective equipment to appropriate supervisors or staff. They also maintain records of inventory or equipment usage and order medical instruments or supplies when inventory is low. They're also often tasked with assisting hospital staff with patient care duties, such as providing transportation or setting up traction. And of course, they set up medical equipment when it's needed, or they deliver it to specified hospital locations or to patients' residences. There is a little bit of an overlap between sterile processing techs and medical equipment preparers, and this really depends on the work environment and the employer and how they dictate who kind of does what. One of the perks of this occupation is the barrier to entry is pretty low. In fact, according to the Occupational Information Network, 44% of sterile processing techs have a high school diploma or equivalent, 31% have some kind of post-secondary certificate, and 15% have a bachelor's degree. So almost 50% of people working in this occupation just have a high school diploma. As for the wages of sterile processing techs, this data is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It doesn't include overtime benefits and other forms of compensation. In 2019, the average base salary for a sterile processing tech was around $40,000. This was actually more than medical assistants, but it was less than dental assistants, dental lab techs, semiconductor techs, and surgical techs. The wages for sterile processing techs have been rising over time. In 1999, the average base salary was $21,220. By 2019, this rose to $39,530. This means that there was a growth of about $18,310 over those 2 decades. This comes out to about $870 per year. If we were to apply this average yearly wage growth into the future, in 2021, the average base salary would be around $41,000 per year. And by 2029, the average base salary would rise to $48,249. There are a number of factors that influence the pay of sterile processing techs. One of them is experience, another one is geography. There's a couple other variables beyond that, such as work environment. But generally, a national starting salary for a sterile processing tech would be probably around the 10th percentile. This means the starting salary would probably be around $27,000 per year. Whereas a sterile processing tech that has lots of experience, works in a hot job market, and maybe works in a good work environment as well, the top 10% of sterile processing techs earn more than $57,000 per year. Like I said before, geography influences the pay of people in this occupation. In this map, the darker blue states are the highest paying states for people in this occupation. Notice that they are on the coasts, mostly on the West Coast and mostly in the Northeast. The highest paying state for people in this occupation was found to be the state of Massachusetts. To round out the top 5, it includes California, DC, Hawaii, and the state of Nevada. Meanwhile, once again, the lowest paying state for people in this occupation is the state of Alabama, where the average base salary is around $30,000. As for which work environment tends to pay people in this occupation the greatest amount of money, it's actually outpatient care centers, where the average base salary is around $45,000. Then it follows employment services, doctor's offices, hospitals, and the least lucrative place for people to work in this occupation is dentist offices. So that covers the compensation of sterile processing techs. What is the job market like? Is it really competitive? Is it hard to find a job? Let's find out. Well, the first thing to understand is the workforce for people in this occupation is actually pretty small. As you can see, there are far more medical assistants around the country than there are sterile processing techs. In 2019, there was 56,900 employed sterile processing techs around the country. So the dental assistant workforce, the medical assistant workforce, and the surgical tech workforce are much larger than this occupation. Often when the workforce is a bit smaller, sometimes it's a little bit harder to find a job in your particular neighborhood. Sometimes you have to cross state lines if the workforce is really, really small. But the number of jobs, the workforce has been growing over time. In 1999, there was 29,070 employed sterile processing techs. This grew to 56,900 in 2019. This occupation almost doubled in 2 years. The workforce almost doubled in 2 years, where there was a growth of around 28,000 jobs. This comes out to a yearly job growth of around 1,300 jobs per year. The government is thinking that this occupation will grow by about 6% over the next 10 years. But if we're factoring in history, the orange line represents the historical trend. So if you're just looking at the historical trend, by 2029, there would be around 70,000 employed people in this occupation. Whereas if you're going to go by the government projection, there would only be a gain of around 3,000 jobs. If you do decide to work in this occupation, you're most likely going to be working in a hospital. 70% of sterile processing techs work in hospitals, whereas only 7% work in dentist offices, 6% work in outpatient care, and 5% work in doctor's offices. So that covers the job market for people in this occupation. The next question is, would this occupation be compatible with your interests and your personality? One way to help determine if this occupation would be for you, if your interests would kind of line up with the kind of work, would be to take a RIASEC assessment and compare your interest scores to people in various occupations. According to the Occupational Information Network, sterile processing techs that take a RIASEC assessment tend to score high in the realistic and investigative themes. People that score high in the realistic theme tend to enjoy being outdoors. They tend to like working with their hands. They tend to like working in real estate. They tend to really enjoy building and repairing things. Whereas people that score high in the investigative theme, they tend to be pretty analytical. They tend to enjoy learning new things, and they tend to be pretty curious. So if you also score high in the realistic and investigative themes, your interests might kind of line up with tasks and roles of this occupation. As for the Myers-Briggs types most likely to be attracted to this occupation, it is the following. ENTPs, also known as the debater, they're the ones that are most likely going to be attracted to this occupation. Second highest was the ISTP, the crafter. That makes sense. Number 3 is the ESTP, the persuader, and 4 is ENTJ, the commander. So as you can see, there are pros and cons to becoming a sterile processing tech in 2021. The barrier to entry is pretty low. Almost 50% of sterile processing techs are just working with a high school diploma. There has been significant job growth over the past 2 decades for people in this occupation, and this will most likely continue. There is pretty good demand for people in this occupation. Also, when I did look on Indeed.com, I found that there was almost 18,000 job postings for people in this occupation. So there definitely is demand for this kind of work. Another similar occupation for people in this occupation is becoming a medical assistant. I've also done a video on this as well. Feel free to check it out. If you are a sterile processing tech, let us know in the comments below what you enjoy and what you dislike about this occupation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.